Yo, what's up guys, it's V-Scorpion Chess, welcome to the channel. In today's video it's the Qatar Masters Open 2023, Round 2. In this game Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, is facing a 23-year-old Kazakh GM Alisher Suleimanov who is rated 25-12. Magnus is plus 300 above in rating and hence confident for the game ahead, but we don't know much about Alisher, so let's check it out what actually happened. Suleimanov opens the game with 1d4. Magnus brings his knight out to f6. c4 played there and taking the center. What is Magnus going to go for? Will he go for e6? Will he go for g6? Will he go for something really exciting with c5? No, he goes e6. Opening up his bishop maybe can play the queen's gambit declined. Generally at the highest level you want to play d5, but because Magnus is facing an opponent who's 300 ELO points lower than him, he goes for a fighting opening with queen's Indian defense b6. Now the main move here by far is g3, but Suleimanov goes for the a3 line, which is also very popular, and the main line often goes bishop e7, knight c3, and d5. That's how you play in the center, but Magnus opts for hitting the c4 pawn with bishop a6, which is a much more active way to play, and you provoke the queen to go to c2 where it no longer controls the d-file. It's an important thing that you provocate there, and then you can drop back your bishop to b7, and that is exactly what Magnus does. And now there's a key point here. You want to play c5, but if the queen was on d1 and knight c3 played, then white could push d5. But by bringing the queen to c2 you no longer have that problem. So Alisher goes knight to c3. He brings his knight out in the center, and the main point now is to play e4. But Magnus of course hits the center with c5, and now d5 is no longer that great because it's a pawn sacrifice. And the most natural move here is to expand in the center with e4. Now this is a very risky strategy that white is employing because he's currently slightly behind in development. As you can see, he's moving his same piece again, and black is also going to develop now with the tempo with bishop to c5 and hitting the knight. However, what white is going for him is the space advantage with these 2 points, so you have to play this very carefully. Now the main move here is knight to b3, hitting the bishop and asking it to leave from there. But Suleimanov goes knight to f3 and he brings his knight back. You might think that knight g4 is a very strong move hitting f2, but white has bishop g5 hitting the queen and then defending the pawn from h4. So that's the reason why Magnus goes g6. Very interesting move. You can see this bishop and knight combined to sort of control all the dark squares in the position. But Suleimanov is well prepared. He's not letting Magnus leave. He goes b4, attacks the bishop. Now the bishop has to move away from c5, or there's an additional idea where you can go knight e4, and maybe if knight takes this bishop takes, but white can play queen d3, and I'm sure that Suleimanov is well prepared. Here Magnus drops his bishop back to e7. We are going to see Magnus having less space, the hedgehog structure where you put your pawn on d6, you castle a6. Queen goes here, rook centralized. Black plays in his first 3 ranks. That's how it is bishop b2. This has not been played so often. Generally you put your bishop on f4 here. But bishop b2 is also a very logical move on the long diagonal. Now Magnus takes a deep think and he plays queen b8 after 3 minutes. This is a fresh position already. Magnus' move is very, very interesting. As we said, black wants to control the dark squares, and that is exactly what he does. And now Suleimanov brings his rook to d1. The rook is fantastically placed on the d5 and later on can put pressure on the d7 pawn. For the time being e5 is impossible because the knight controls that square along with the queen, so actually black can just castle it out. Yes, that's exactly what Magnus has done. He's castled here and now. He put his bishop on d3, but then it impedes with the rook's action on the d5. So I would say bishop e2 seems the most logical, and that's exactly what he does. He brings his bishop out to e2, and now Magnus Carlsen has to decide what to do next. Should he go d6? Yes, he plays his pawn up to d6. The knight is on d7, not on c6. Here I think Magnus can reroute it via e5 to d7 if possible, and I think that is what he might want to do. Eventually d6 played, and now Suleimanov takes the time out to simply short castle. Here he makes his move very slowly. You know, like really places the pieces on their correct squares and places move. So castles has been played here, and now where does Magnus go? He goes rook c8. He identifies that the c4 pawn is slightly soft and that he can put pressure there. Maybe 95 could be an idea to attack this pawn, but the main thing is that when knight comes to e5 it would be taken another fine move. This is very nice chess. You know, this rook is doing nothing on f1. Bring it to e1, put the bishop back on f1. That's the plan. Bishop effect played by Magnus. His maybe at some point the idea could be to go g6 b7, although highly unlikely with the bishop on b2 being there. And I think for Soleimani he can continue with his plan of bishop f1. That's exactly what he has played. Bishop comes bac. White's position is a picture of coordination. 95 is something that Magnus should think about. Yes, he gets the double points, but it's quite well known this. He goes knight e7, and this is not a good move because yes, he wants to shift his knight to g6, but now white has a powerful sequence of moves which Suleimanov begins with knight b5. Fantastic move. First he attacks the b6 pawn, and notice if you go knight g6 you're already risking spoiling your structure here on the king's side, which is not the end of the world, but it's not something that you can do very lightly, so this is quite a problem that Magnus is facing for the time being, but I guess he can go for this passive move 98, although it looks quite terrible. He goes 98, but he's missed Suleimanov's response. Here white has a very, very strong move which starts with 95. But such a tough move to play here because you're putting your knight here with the action of the queen wanting to push forward with e50. He finds it. What a move by Suleimanov, fantastic move if I in the air, and look at this. Unfortunate position of the queen whenever you take if I bishop, if I sort of traps the queen. So these are the tactical possibilities in the air. Now it's 6 can be played, but there is this unbelievable sacrifice with knight f7. Okay, Magnus doesn't go there for the time being, he goes knight g6, which is very logical because the knight now blocks the queen's path. However, e5 is still a brilliant move. The reason because after you take this bishop 5, and Soleimano finds it. Magnus pushes his pawn quickly. Now this is psychology because Magnus saw that if he takes, he cannot take with the knight as there is a mate here on at 7. So he pushes the pawn forward and he tells Suleimani that he is fine with this position, gets up from the chair. Alisher Suleimanov now thinking, and he plays his queen to b3. He's so cool and calm. He just moves his queen away and he tells Magnus that this position is losing. The reason for that is that these bonds are too soft. Well, Magnus says I'm going bishop 7. Next move I'll put my knight on f8 and save everything. I'm also hitting your knight. If you go back knight to f3 dc4 I'm completely fine. So for Alisher the margin of error is very small, but he plays 9 of 7. What a classy move. And the main thing that Alisher now is focusing on is the black king. The black major pieces are on the other side of the board, so the king is sort of lonely. Magnus takes the piece and he says, show me what you've got. Well, c takes d5 is what I've got, says Alisher. Now the threat is d6 d7, the pawn moving forward, so you will have to take on d5 either with the bishop or the pawn. Magnus removes his jacket, takes on d5 with the bishop, but it's not going to be helpful. Rook takes the 5. What a sacrifice there. Another sacrifice is given up a piece. Now he's given an exchange, so he's a complete look down. He takes d5 and I think the attack will continue. Queen takes d5 if coming up now next. And this is brilliant. Queen x d5 check, king moves back, and now how do you continue and finish it off, because it's not so simple. One idea is rook e3 to f3 that you can think of your route down what Ali Shah finds 94. And the amazing part of this move is that 96 is a massive threat, and if you play knight c7 I go back with a check and now play knight c6 hitting the queen. Queen b7 is met with 97 and you lose the queen. So that was the tactical refutation there, knight. For played by Magnus. He knows that he is losing the game because knight f4. Now with queen f3 you can simply pin the knight, and exactly what Alisher does. Now g5 cannot save you because g3 is coming in. So if you lose a piece here then you will only be an exchange down, which is nothing much in such a position where you already have 2 pawns. Kingsgate played by Magnus trying to escape. Ali Shah simply takes the knight materially. Black is doing okay. He has a rook for white, bishop, and 2 poles. However, the problem here is that after queen b7 this bishop is going to come into the game, maybe via g3 bishop h4 or d3 bishop 4. These are the possibilities, and Ali Shah now. Good night to a fight. He attacks this bishop on e7. He is also looking at e6 to unleash the power of his other bishop. You can see Magnus knows that the writing is on the wall. He plays b5 just to stop bishop c4 check. But that move absolutely has the tactical refutation. You can just take off that pawn, and that's exactly what Suleimanov does. You cannot take with the queen because check king hatchet and queen f8 is checkmate. And so what do? You go bishop pepe. However, unfortunately now you are 3 points down and already white is ahead in material. Alicia now goes bishop c4 check. If you take here you will be equalizing the material and be 3 points down south. King h8. Magnus trying to fight hard in this position, but actually there's nothing much left to be done. Knight at 6. Brilliant move 6. Brilliant move, threatening a check here. Also threatening to take the bishop. This seems like the final nail in the coffin. 31 moves have been played. And Magnus Carlsen resigns. So guys, I know it's shocking for you too, seeing Magnus Carlsen losing is not so often. Anyways, I will catch you all soon with the next one. Until then, it's V Scorpion Chess.